artifacts they've brought home from their travels and stuff. So please be careful with that. And while you're doing that, I'll let you know that these are pictures of children or groups of people or women in the actual areas that Keri is going to share about tonight. So these are kids who eat in the feeding center or attend the school, or women who have been to the events that she's put on or a part of the church there locally. This is a prayer card, so you can actually take this home at the end of the night and just remember her ministry and pray for what's going on in Kenya. Now, one of the things that is pretty interesting that I was looking at this week, and I thought that might help us really get a good grounding on what the ministry looks like over there, is the UNICEF has put together 7 factors that they believe every person needs to be able to thrive. And in your little collection of cards here, everyone grab one of these collection of cards in the center of the table. There's different colors. Doesn't really matter which color you end up with. Is the 7 areas. And so these make a lot of sense. So one of them is information. Think about the fact that we have mail that gets to us regularly, or we have access to internet normally every place we go. Imagine how hard it would be to not know if a place was open and you've traveled several miles on foot to get there only to find out that they're closed, right? Or the ability to contact or be in communication with people. Information and access to information is huge. Shelter is another one. And we all know that having a place to stay and lay your head is a huge part of being able to thrive. Nutrition is a very obvious one, and this is one that we answer directly with feeding centers. If you don't have enough to eat, it's difficult to focus on anything else. And then if you don't have the right things to eat, it's difficult to become the type of person you need to be with your brain development, all of these things that kids go through. Clothing, not just having clothes to cover your back, but also having clean clothes to change into when those clothes get dirty. Disease and all kinds of things, hygiene issues result from that. Education. In Kenya, and Keri will talk about this, public education is only provided up through elementary school. So if you're a student who's in middle school or above, you don't get to go to school. You don't get to learn. You don't get access to a teacher or anything unless you pay for it after that age. Huge deal. Leisure, the ability to have a hobby, the ability to play golf or do something like that with a group of friends, the ability to get good at something. Huge, huge, huge. And community. To have a group of people, even outside your family, that you can gather around that is looking out for you, that is trying to help you become what you need to be. Someone who looks around and says, these are our kids, not just some kids. These are kids that we're watching and taking care of. So those are the 7 things that we have there. And so what I want you to do is I want you to, if you have a green set of these, hold them up. And good news for you. Raise your hand if you got green ones. All right. Good news for you. You are part of the 10% of people in Kenya, and the study was just done in 2021, that is able to experience all 7 of these. There's a great chance you're going to be able to thrive and be able to provide for your family, maybe even provide a future for your family or generations to come. If you have the blue cards, hold them up. All right, if you have a blue cards, I want you to ask someone in your table to go ahead and fan them out and take 2 of those cards and put them in the center of the table. Take the 2 of cards from you and put them in the center of the table. 38% of the population is lacking at least 2 of these factors. So hopefully you have someone nice who's going to take away something that you're okay with losing. Tom, are you wheeling and dealing? And you're trying to say, hey, you can have this, but I'm holding on to the nutrition. Yeah. All right. Now, has everyone finished with the blue? Okay, now if you have red ones, hold them up. All right. If you have a red card, you are going to let someone at your table take away 3 of those 7 factors. 3 of those 7 factors. All right. If you, 52%, 1 out of every 2 kids under 18 years old in Kenya experiences what's called multi-dimensional poverty, where they are missing 3 or more of these vital things to be able to thrive. Imagine what your life would be like without a place to live. Imagine what your life would be like without a place to live and no community to be looking out for you. Add to that you have zero access to education or maybe even information. Is there any chance that you would be able to rise above that station in life? Is there any chance that you'd be able to provide for children? Is there any chance that you would even care necessarily what the gospel says, or would you just be hustling to try and do whatever you can to make it through a day? Here are the stats that go along with this. So if you are missing 3 of those, you have a substantially lower life expectancy. Your chances are cut by half if you're missing 3 or more of those factors from someone who's missing 2 of them for being able to rise above that station in life and be able to provide for your family. I mean, that is profound. And these are the types of things that Manna does every single day. It provides community, it provides food, it provides belonging. You have a group of people looking out for these kids. And this is why we, as people who have all 7 of these for the most part, probably most of us, have a unique calling to be involved in mission work that not only starts churches, but also helps kids. Now, I want you to talk at your table just briefly. I want you to look at that picture you're holding, and I want you to talk about what experience you think that person would have, what it would be like to be that person, just before we get started by hearing from Keri.
Well, I sure hate to interrupt good conversation, but let me do that. And I want you just to imagine the things that Adam was talking about, and think about it in terms of a city of Nairobi, which is approximately 5 million, which is 20 to 25 times bigger than Boise. And think about that number of people and that amount of need. And that's one of the reasons why we partner with Manna and other missionaries to help meet that need. So I would like to introduce to you Keri Kondracki. We have partnered with Keri for years. She works with Manna, and I'm excited to hear about what's going on in her ministry and Manna. And so can we just give her a warm welcome? Hi, Keri. How are you? Yeah, good to see you.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, Keri, let's start off here. What part of the United States are you from?
I was born and raised in the suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I taught in a Christian school. I ended up spending 14 years in Wilmington, Delaware, because it was a house I bought close to my school. And as soon as I bought it, the Lord said, guess what? I'm going to have you step out. And I ended up not teaching at the school much longer, but I stayed in Delaware for 14 years, and now I'm back in Pennsylvania.
So I think I heard you correctly. I think I heard you say that you are from Philadelphia.
Yes.
And a follow-up question. Are you a Philadelphia Eagles fan?
I am by relation because my whole family, they are diehard Eagles fans. I have to say, I'm usually for the underdog, and the only time I ever watched a game was when the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl.
If you're for the underdog, how come you're not a Cowboys fan?
I'm sorry, I'm not a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, all right. Let's give her a hand, all right, yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about how long you've been working with Manna and what's your responsibility with Manna?
Sure. So I have been partnering with Manna Worldwide for 10 and a half years. And I joined Manna as a Manna missionary and quickly stepped into an assistant directorship, working with the director of Europe, Jerry Abbott. And for many years, Jerry and I partnered in reaching people in Europe and building ministries, Manna ministries, throughout Romania, Ukraine, Greece, and Albania. And I also began to feel called to teach women and minister to women. And so in 2015, when I taught women in Romania, it was clear to me that my role with Manna was to help build ministries, but particularly build ministries for women. And so since 2015, I have focused on doing that. And the Lord has grown our women's ministry, and we are now in 9 countries with Manna Worldwide.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, in a nutshell, for someone who maybe this is the first time they're hearing about Manna and not really familiar with what Manna does, just what would you say to that person briefly about, hey, here's a strategy, here's what Manna does?
Well, Manna has a heart for children, and they really focus on building nutrition centers around the globe. We're in 50 countries, 225 projects worldwide. But as we minister to children in our nutrition centers by offering hearty meals, nutritious meals, we share the love of Christ. We show the love of Christ. And these kids come to know Christ. Every one of our Manna projects is connected to a local church plant. And so as the kids come to know Christ and go home and share that with their families, the families know we're feeding their kids. We care about their kids. And they see the difference that we're making in the lives of their kids. Many of our families will come to the church and they will learn about Christ. So we reach families through meeting physical needs, but we also meet their spiritual needs. And we build schools for meeting their educational needs. We build family homes and orphanages all over the world, and that means emotional needs. So we really seek to just honor the Lord in meeting the needs of those that the Lord brings into our care.
And we've been long-term partners with Manna, and so if you've been at Bridgepoint for a while, you've certainly heard about Manna, but if you're new to Bridgepoint, if you've ever heard somebody talk about a feeding center or a nutritional center, that's what this is. And we, as a church, we support 6 feeding centers, 5 in Central America, and then 1 in Ivory Coast. And we feed, as a result of our partnership, over 450 children every week. And they receive meals, but not only do they receive meals, they hear about Jesus. And so it's just been a great long-term partnership. Now, one of the things about, Nighttime in Nairobi is that you came across a feeding center, and it's not a feeding center that we support on a monthly basis, although we've been part of that feeding center. So how'd you come across that particular feeding center there in Nairobi?
Well, there was a woman in your church, Danielle Snelson, who had journeyed with me to Europe and helped me with women's ministries and the nutrition centers in Europe. And she was on a safari in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. And she called me before she went and she said, I know there has to be a Manna Center somewhere in Nairobi. If it's close enough, I will drive to it, because I love what Manna does. I love that they serve children and meet the needs of those in third world countries. So I put Danielle in touch with the Manna director for Africa, and she went and visited this nutrition center called Kitamba, which is 40 minutes from the Nairobi International Airport. And she came home from that trip and she called me and she said, Keri, you need to see this. You need to help them. They need help. And so I began to study and find out what's happening in this area. This was an underfunded and severely neglected project. And what happens, and this happens in my own personal life, so I understand this. When churches go and they see projects, like some of your people have gone with me to Greece to see a project, and they've gone with me to Romania to see a project, sometimes the church gets on board and they start supporting that project. But then something happens in that church, like a split, and that was this case for Kitamba. There was a church in Indiana that was solely supporting the church and sending money. And they were sending teams, but then they had a church split. And it was 9 years before anybody went back. And the Lord took one of your people and dropped him right in the center. And then brought that person to me. And you see, the Lord brought that, and I've been focused on Europe. But the Lord brought me something that wasn't on my plan. And I prayed about it, and he gave me the green light. He gave me peace because they needed help. And this Pastor Stephen Mwangi, desperately needed help. And so the Lord sent us, a person from your church and me, and we went, and our eyes were opened. We asked questions. We learned about the needs. We saw the needs. And then the Lord brought me home, and I was able to connect people that helped this project. And I went back and took Christmas to the kids in 2 locations in this area. That's how it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also from Bridgepoint, we helped out tangibly on a roof and a concrete floor and tables, and I think you might have a picture or two.
I do. When we went in 2021 and saw the great needs, and let me tell you, we did a lot, but there was a lot more that needed to be done. These are some of the women that we were able to teach. These are moms of the Kitamba Center children. We took Christmas to them, and they're standing behind food bags that will last for weeks. We had 60 food bags that we handed out to our Kitamba moms. The next slide. These are our 2 cooks, Violet and Redempta. Violet, I want you to remember her face because I have a short story about her. In fact, I could probably share that right now. The Lord took us to Kitamba in 2021, 2 weeks after I flew home. Violet's son was killed. If I had never met her, I would have never been able to help her. And our women's ministry with Manna Worldwide paid for her son's funeral that she would have never been able to do. You know, and that's just showing up. That's just being available. And again, Africa was not where I was planning, but the Lord brought Africa and made that need aware to me, and I just showed up. So these are our two cooks, Violet and Redempta. They feed 396 children twice a day. Next slide. This is a daycare that we actually started, and this is new. This is about 4 months old, and this particular area is not Kitamba. It's 40 minutes from Kitamba. But the mamas, bless you, the mamas can't work unless somebody's watching their kids. And so we pay to have the kids watched and fed and cared for, and the moms can rest and you know, be confident that their kids are being well cared for while they go and look for jobs every day. Because there's no work. And so they have to go and just find odd jobs. So this is our daycare, 35 kids. And this is Pastor Stephen Mwangi. And this is his wife, Tabitha. And these were the two that the member in your church met and fell in love with and said, you have got to meet these people. They work so hard for the Lord. And I did. I flew there, and I see what he does for his people. I see the love that he has for the Kenyans. This is Stars for Jesus Community Chapel Church. This is a new daycare. And Kitamba, those are the two projects that your church has helped us with. The next slide. This is the building that needed a roof because it was leaking. Stars for Jesus Community Chapel Church and the Kitamba Nutrition Center needed a new roof. And when it rains, and I was in Nairobi when it rains, it's so important to have a good roof, because I was in my little hotel room, which is like a little villa, and the roof, you can see, is like metal. And the heavy rain was like buckets just pouring out of the sky. And I remember thinking of your church and waking up at like 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, if we did not have a roof, a good roof, like this one on the church and the Kitamba Nutrition Center, everything would have caved in. They can't even have service and Sunday school because when it rains that way, it just leaks. And everybody gets wet, everything gets flooded. This is what your church has done. And I tagged people in your church because I wanted your church to see and know the Lord took me to Kenya and rains came, and I got to experience and understand the importance of this roof that your church put on one of our projects. So thank you for that. Then the next slide.
This is Nighttime in Nairobi.
But thank you, that was a little bit long.
You know, one of the things that happens is just because of us partnering together as a church, that when there's needs and we think about it, we pray about it, then there's resources. And thank you for just your faithfulness. And so when this need was presented for a roof, we were just able to do that. And the thing about these children, whether it's in Nairobi or in a feeding center in Panama, Guatemala, Cuba, Haiti, all Honduras, and in Ivory Coast, it's used in terms of meeting needs, which is really important, but then it gives an opportunity to be able to share the gospel, and we will never know the impact of that investment. So thank you so much for all that you've done. What would be one last story?
Yeah. Pastor Stephen, I shared a little bit about Violet and how the Lord took me to their area because he knew that they were going to need help. And they were going to need that connection. And that's all I am. I'm a connector. I connect people like you with people who are in need of help. And Violet, I was able to help her with her needs. And Pastor Stephen Mwangi is this little servant Kenyan national pastor who has a beautiful heart for the Lord. He works harder than anybody I've ever met on any field, and I've done this for 25 years. I've met a lot of people. I've never seen anyone quite like Pastor Stephen. He has a heart for the Lord, and he loves his people. And he's all about helping the children and their families. But he didn't have any help. And the Lord took him help. He took someone from your church, and he took someone who's just willing to help. And we showed up, and we've made all the difference in the way that now we tell his story. We tell what he does. We show his ministries, of which he is pastor of Stars for Jesus Community Chapel Church, but he also does everything for the Manna Nutrition Center 40 miles away. He works harder than anybody else. He knows every single child in that center, 396 kids. All I have to do, you see the pictures you have? I send him a picture, and I say, what is her name? Bam, I get the answer right away. He knows his people. He loves his people, and he serves his Lord well. And that's the kind of partnership that I want to get behind. These are some of the kids. We had birthday cake for Jesus for his birthday. These are the kids in his church. This is one of the kids in the daycare having a meal. And Pastor Stephen needed help. And so I'm going to tell his story. The Lord brought him help. He brought him your church that put a roof on his church and the Katamba Center. And every time I've asked Pastor, what do you need? What can I do for you? It's always for the kids. It's always for somebody else. But I'll tell you, what we did in the roof really was helping him. He loves to do for his people, and he becomes emotional every time he talks about what we've been able to do to help him. And so I know the Lord has something great in store, and I'm just really, really thankful for your partnership.
Yeah. Well, Keri's going to be with us on Sunday as well, and on Sunday, we're going to talk a little bit about Manna's effort in terms of the Ukrainian-Romanian relief that you might remember from last spring, and we'll talk about that. So, but before you go, you know, we are really, really glad that our middle school students are here with us. Can we just give these middle school students a hand right here? There they are. We're glad you're with us. And so what we wanted to do was invite Jonathan up, and we're going to give you a little middle school flavor here.
I like that. I taught middle school.
Oh yeah, well we love fun and games in middle school, so well thank you for sharing, Keri, about what God's doing in Nairobi, which is awesome. But we're gonna play a little game of Would You Rather Nairobi edition, okay? So what's gonna happen is I've asked some of the students to pick Would You Rather questions based on Nairobi, and they're gonna read them. And then all of you guys are going to try to guess what Keri is going to select, okay? And so that's basically it. No pressure. No wrong answers.
Hey.
Levi, you want to go first? All right.
If you had 1,000 Kenyan shillings, which is about $8 US, do you think Keri would rather go to the street vendors or the Westgate shopping mall down in Nairobi? You can stand up if you think she would choose the street vendors, or remain seated if she would choose the mall. Okay. And Keri, what do you think?
Street vendors, absolutely. Absolutely. Help the people. Absolutely.
That's good. You want to go next? All right.
It's better quality, too.
Okay, fancy. Okay. Nairobi has two informal nicknames, the Safari Capital of the World and the Green City in the Sun. Which one would you rather use to explain Nairobi? So stand up if you think she would choose the Safari Capital of the World, and stay seated if you think she would choose the Green City in the Sun. Which one would you rather, the Safari Capital of the World?
Safari. Absolutely. It was amazing. You can see the wild animals from the main highway. The giraffes, rhinos, come right up to the highway.
At the Manna Feeding Center, would you rather spend time with the kids during meals or playtimes? Stand up for meal times and sit down for playtimes. Okay, what's your answer?
Playtime. Good questions.
Kenya produces 492,000 tons of tea and has approximately 150,000 coffee farmers. You have both. Would you rather only drink tea or coffee? Stand up for tea or sit down for coffee? Tea or coffee?
Coffee. The best. The best. It's really yummy. Java.
All right.
Thank you.
The Elephant and Rhino Nursery is located in Nairobi. Which animal would you rather visit? Stand up for elephant, sit down for rhino. Okay. Would you rather visit the elephants or the rhinos?
I visited the elephants, and it's amazing, and I would do that again. They're orphans.
All right, that's it. Can you guys give it up for the middle schoolers, please, for choosing those?
Thank you.
That's awesome. To watch this video of Stan and Jackie Sherwood. Now, they are missionaries in Panama, and we had a team from Bridgepoint go and check out their ministry. And they're new to the Bridgepoint missionary family as of 2022. Last year, if you remember, we gave them $20,000 for their roof on their feeding center and their church. And so let's check out this video on what's going on in Panama.
Good morning, Bridgeport Church. So excited to be able to come to you and share what God has been doing here and what you guys have been a part of through prayer and your sacrificial giving. You have supported us in so many ways, but one of the amazing ways you guys have really helped us is getting this roof on this building. Absolutely amazing, and we're so thankful. We haven't got an actual complete permissions to be in the building yet, but we're still hosting services. And by the grace of God, we'll have those permissions in just a few short weeks. I'm Stan Sherwood, I didn't say that, and my wife Jackie and I are your missionaries here in Panama. Today is our third day of Vacation Bible School. So I'm going to walk you in. I want you to see what's going on inside the building. Here's our entranceway. all the rooms are prepared and ready. We're going to actually be having Sunday school starting tomorrow and the main service tomorrow as well. And we got the kitchen and the feeding center in here. It's all ready for the kids today. Great kitchen. Praise the Lord. And we're excited to have you guys come back down here very, very soon. We need to plan another trip for you guys. But let's take a peek at what's going on in here. I hope you like this. Is that not awesome or what? We are so excited. We've got about probably just almost 75 kids in there today, and God is just doing amazing work here. Keep those prayers coming, and we're so thankful. That's opening the doors to many of the hearts and lives of the families here. And let's plan another trip real soon. Praying for your mission conference. God bless you all. Have a fantastic week.
Well, it was great to be down there with a team of people last July and see from this video the progression that has happened in their church building. And again, thank you so much just for your generosity. David and Ruth Hammond are from our own congregation, and they are missionaries with Dare for More. And I'm going to ask them if they would come on up. And yeah, great.
You can use Adam's notes.
So really great to see you here. I guess my first question is, do you need a roof of any kind? Seems like we're on a roof roll right now.
Give me just a minute and I'll find a way to need a roof.
Yeah. Well, it is, I think, hard to believe that a year ago you were here and presenting the ministry of what that God had called you to. So I think we've been behind you, we're praying for you, we're supporting you, but I think we'd all like to know what's happened, what's gone on in this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And first thing I have to say is thank you so much. If you're in this room, I know that you're a part of this church, and you're a part of our family, and that means you're a part of our team. And so we can't do this without you. And we're just so incredibly thankful for all the support that we've received over the last year from you guys. Because last year we spent a lot of time fundraising. That's been our primary job as we prepare to kind of bridge the gap between Boise, the West Coast, and Guatemala, where the majority of our ministry is. And so, while fundraising is not the job that I signed up for, it's been the job that God's given me. And so I really quick wanted to just share a little story of the way God works, even through just our lives. And this is a $2 framed. It's not a picture. It's $2 that I framed. And last Sunday, Pastor Jeffy was talking about giving of your dollar, if that's what you had. And this was at a church that I was sharing at last February. It's almost a year ago. And a woman came up and she gave me $2 for our ministry. And I was blown away. So much so that I hung on to it for a long time, not sure what I should do. It was a little bit torn. I could tell she gave me everything she had to give. And so I was like, man, I need that to go to work. I need that to do something. And after a little while, I realized that the best thing that it could do was be a huge encouragement for us as we continue to raise our funds. Right now, we are at about 45% committed funds, but overall, because of people like your generosity, we raised 65% of our funds for last year. So, we need the committed funds, but we did really good, I think. God was amazing in the way that he blessed us. And like I said, a lot of that has to do with you. But we've been doing some other things this year, right?
We're also doing Spanish classes because we're going to be in Guatemala. So Dave's actually missing his first class for this semester tonight.
I'm a teacher.
So we did take Spanish classes last semester, and we're going to repeat it. And then I just got an opportunity to meet with somebody so that we could converse together. And we're doing everything that we can so that we can communicate to the people that we want to minister to.
Yeah, there's lots of other stuff, but we'll share that as we go through some of the other questions, I think.
Yeah. So what has, how has the ministry developed? Because I think when you were here last year, there were some questions, and there still may be some questions, but there's probably, you're a year into it, you probably have a little bit better idea now. So how's the ministry developed?
So with every ministry, you have to have funds for the ministry. And so that's why the coffee is really excellent for us. So we've partnered with Chickabee, and they hire women specifically in Guatemala, and they've promised to hire and train our women too. And what that does is it provides sustainability, so the money goes directly back into the ministry. So people are able to buy their either just a bag of coffee or a subscription, so it could come to your house every month or whatever frequency you might want. So it's a really good opportunity for us to be able to continue to support, because as much as fundraising is great, it's also good just to have something that continues to come into the ministry to help pay for the needs of the ministry.
Yeah, and so Ruth's super humble, but one of the things she didn't say is that's been one of her new jobs, is she handles all of those orders that come in. And so that's, I think, one of the big things that we learned last year, is that we're going to wear lots and lots of different hats, including, getting to travel to Guatemala, which we did a couple times, and Ruth led or co-led a trip down there as like training. So there's been a lot of answers, because ultimately the goal is to meet needs for women so that we can share the gospel. That's the ultimate goal. No matter what we're doing, we want to be able to share the gospel. And so last year, when we were here, we were sharing that there was a safe house that we wanted to create, that we felt like God was calling us to put on a piece of land, and we just didn't know how we could do that. And so we've got a couple slides here, and we can share with you. Go to the next slide. So this is going to be our very first safe house in Guatemala. This God's provided the opportunity for us to purchase a building complete, which was not what we had planned. We actually saw huge roadblocks and thought, what in the world are we supposed to do? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And as this is my metaphor, but as we kind of stood there and like scratched our head, we looked to the left and said, oh my goodness, look at that. And ultimately that was, in real life, this building being brought to us as an opportunity for us to purchase it. And so, so this is going to be able to house approximately 10 women at its full running capacity. And next slide. This is actually currently our training center for women that are learning to sew, and they spend an entire year in that class. So they're not just learning to sew. Obviously, they're learning about the gospel, but when they accept Christ, they're continuing to be discipled through a very long process. And many of the women that just finished their first year are planning on staying on as trainers for us into the future. Super exciting. Next slide. And this is another portion of the property. And actually, one of the things we realized is we're going to be putting a small church in there, because when we have women in the safe house, they need to stay on the property so that they can remain safe. And so we'll be, God willing, in God's timing, we'll be putting a family to stay there with somebody to pastor these women and have Sunday services right there every Sunday. So God is so amazing. There's not any way that any of us thought we would be here really this quick. We wanted to. We knew God was asking us to move quickly. But yeah, he's doing things way bigger than we could have imagined.
So in a nutshell, if somebody's not familiar with Dare for More, how would you describe that ministry briefly?
Yeah, so Dare for More has always had a heart for women and discipling and spreading the gospel, helping women to grow and to see ultimately what I see from the outside is that they're valuable, that God loves them. He ultimately sent his son to die on the cross for them. And obviously all of us are valuable, right? But in Guatemala, because of the poverty and the abuse and the trafficking and all of the issues that face women, they come to us, and we've seen this throughout the year, over and over they come to us and they're at their wits' end, and sometimes, thinking that there's no reason to go on. And so we teach them to sew or to bake, and we actually have a video that we brought that we can show now of a baking class. And we do this to train to help them so that they have a reasonable way to go out into the world and provide for themselves and their family. And we're seeing it play out. Some of the women that have finished the baking classes are going out and selling cakes, and they're able to more than double what they put into it. So just real quick math, approximately if you use US dollars, they can sell a cake for about $12, and it costs them about $5. And so we teach them business so that they recognize they can't spend all 12. They gotta save at least 5 so they can reinvest in their next cake. And it's really changing lives. And more importantly, it's given us amazing opportunities to share the gospel and watch women's lives change, and even seen at least one man give his life to Christ, and his whole life has changed as well.
And what's so important about it is that when these women were hopeless, they had no value or believed they had no value. We step in, we teach them skills. They start to see that they have value. And then through teaching them about the Lord, they understand that their value is from God. And they were always that way anyways. They just didn't understand that about themselves. And when you reach women, you also reach kids. And through reaching that part of the family, you have an in to reach their husband too. And this is ultimately, we want to reach the whole family and show them the love of Jesus and give them skills so that they can be successful in the Lord first, but then in their communities as well.
So can you play that video for us? This is just a quick video that shows a baking class.
Well, we believe that this is something that everybody can be involved in, including our kids. And so over the last couple Sundays, they put together some coasters, and last Sunday, out there in the lobby, people donated money for the coasters, and then put all of that money together, and we have a presentation that we'd like to make to Dave and Ruth. So come on up.
You guys can start coming up. Good evening, Bridgepoint. I'm so glad I didn't say good morning. Like Pastor Jeff said, that we can all be involved. And so we've been learning all about Paul next door and how it's our job to go and tell the world all about Jesus. And so the kids have been just as involved as we have been over here. And every year we like to do a fundraiser so that we can be financially involved also. And so our K through 5th graders worked really hard to make these awesome posters. Sorry, it's not very big, but they used Scrabble letters and they made posters. And so every time you put your drink down on this poster, hopefully you'll pray for your missionaries. And you'll remember Dave and Ruth. Some of them say there for more, like this one. So it's really awesome. A couple really cool things, though, about our fundraiser is these guys are some servants. And they joyfully serve every time we give them a project to do. And another super cool thing is Dave and Ruth are their teachers. They are in there every other week. So it's so cool to be able to see, oh, my teachers are missionaries, and they're going all over the world to tell others about Jesus. I can do that same thing. And so when it came time to decide where our fundraiser monies were going to go, there was no surprise or question of who it should go to. And so we are so excited. We need a drum roll, though, because this is a surprise for everybody. And of course, we couldn't do it without your generosity, so thank you. But okay, you guys, go ahead and flip that check around, and let's show it to Mr. Dave and Miss Ruth. $1,771.69. We are so excited. So thank you guys for your support, and give these guys another round of applause. Have fun. Good luck cashing that big old check.
No problem.
So, Mr. Dave, you can go down there. Mr. Dave, they want to give you that. They want you to hold it.
All right. Everybody scoot in toward the light. Right? Did you get a picture?
There you go.
Good job. All right, thank you. Well, Dave's leaving, so Ruth. Let's kind of finish by just asking, what do you see is in the future? What's next in 2023?
So we are leading a family mission trip coming up in March, which we're super excited about because our kiddos get to go. And there's a few other families from this church and a family from another church that's coming with us. And we are expanding our baking ministry we were in one Mayan village. Now we're going to be in 2 additional ones, so that's 3 total. We're going to be graduating our first set of sewing students. So this has been a year-long process. And what's so cool about that is we've trained them to be trainers. And so when we were down there in October, we got to participate in some sewing projects with them, and they were trying out their hand on training us how to do some of those projects, because ultimately that's what their job will be. And that's just a few things. We got a lot.
Yeah, and then ministry-wise, that safe house, it is our goal for 2023 to get it up and running with 5 women by the end of the year. And it's a huge ask, but our founder, Rita Bowman, she believes that God will provide the funds to pay the thing off and have it all taken care of. And so those are our our big goals ministry-wise. Obviously, we will graduate another class of sewing students. And what we've seen as we go throughout is that God continues to provide new opportunities for us to serve in that community, and it can continue to be more and more embedded in the area around Antigua and San Lucas.
Great. Well, it's just been awesome in this last year to partner with you, and we look forward to the new year to continue our partnership. And we're really proud of you both. Thank you so much for representing the Lord well, representing our church well, and we're excited about what God's going to do in the new year. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well, I think what you heard tonight is just a small part of Bridgepoint's involvement in missions around the world. But there's a common thread. And one of the common threads is this. You heard from Keri, who said, hey, she was in Europe and found herself in Africa. And from Dave and Ruth, who, go back 4 or 5 years, I don't think they would have imagined to be here and ministering in Guatemala. Our responsibility as individual Christians and as a church is just to say yes. And when there's an opportunity to put a roof on in a church in Africa or in Panama, and that's the door that's open to us, that's the door we step through. Now, it doesn't ever work out like you think it will. Last year, we talked about stepping through what we felt was an opportunity, or praying about an opportunity, in regard to establishing a deaf church here in the Treasure Valley. And we've not given up on it, but I will tell you that up to this point, we've not had anybody respond who would be able to be the leader or the pastor of that church. And we're going to continue, but it's an example of you don't know exactly what the Lord's doing. You don't know exactly what the timing is. We just have the responsibility to, as much as we possibly can, to say yes. And that's what so many of you have done. You've prayed for our missionaries. You've given to missionaries. And the results of that are people who are saved, lives that have been changed, families that are different than what they were before. And you and I will just never know what all happens until we get to heaven. So here's my encouragement for all of us tonight. And it is an encouragement that I learned when I was a little boy. Because when my dad accepted Christ and we started going to church, there were 3 brothers. And so we kind of lined up to go to church, and Mom would find whatever coins she could find, and she would make sure that she would hand to each of us 2 coins. I've got 2 coins in my hand right here. And what I learned from an early age is that 1 coin we give to the Lord, to the church, and another coin we give to the Lord for the missionaries. And that is a principle that Becky's parents taught her, and what we have practiced. And any of the investment that we've ever given to Manna, Dave and Ruth, missions, whatever it may be, we've never missed it. We've always been blessed by giving it. Because there's nothing better that can be done with the resources that God has given us to reinvest back into His kingdom, to see people accept Christ as Savior. And so what my encouragement for all of us is what will you do to continue your partnership with our missionary family? Or what will you do to start a partnership with our missionary family? And so there on the table, there's a lot of stuff. One of the things that are on the table is a bookmark that is a prayer list that has all the missionaries that in 2023, this is the current list, this is who we are supporting. It looks like this. And then there's a second card, and this card has on it, Change Your World. And I would just like for you to think about and pray about what could you do to help start churches? That's what Greg Lyons talked about last Sunday, the investment in starting churches around the world. What could we do to help kids? That's our Manna investment. It's $25 a month to feed a child in a Manna feeding center. And so what could we do? There are people that they sponsor multiple children, and some people, together they sponsor a child. It's just whatever the Lord lays on your heart. And then the third thing, it says, get in the game, and that is the support of missionaries from our own church. And this time last year, we had a Get in the Game with Dave and Ruth. And I got to tell you, your generosity in terms of giving to Dave and Ruth, anything that was given, we just passed right along at the end of every month. They just got a check for whatever had come in. But I got to tell you, there were thousands and thousands of dollars that came in. Thank you for your generosity. We're asking that we would do this again for this year to help continue to support them in their ministry. So whatever it is that God is asking you to do, I believe that it is not the amount, it's the sacrifice. And if we would all sacrifice equally, then what we would find is that there would be resources that when there's a roof that needs to be replaced, we can do that. When there is something else, like whatever it may be, could be all sorts of things, but it's an open door that we can say yes to. There'll be the resources there that we're able to meet those needs. To meet those needs that makes a difference in the lives of people for an eternity. And my last thing is this. Fast forward 100 years from now. And seriously, what else matters? The only thing that matters 100 years from now is that people know Jesus. And how are they going to know Jesus? They're going to know Jesus by people who are willing to go, people who are willing to send. The gospel is shared, and as a result, people come to know Christ. Thank you for your support. Thank you so much for your investment. Thank you for loving people that you've never met and may never meet until we get to heaven. But I'm telling you, there's coming a time when you're going to meet people that you've never seen before, and you're going to have some conversations that will just be awesome. So thank you for your generosity. So let's do this. Let's close by praying. I'm going to have Adam come up, and Adam will close us out in prayer. And then, right after that prayer, there's a few things that he'll give us some instruction on.
Lord, thank you so much for the great things we heard and the things we just get to be involved in. Thank you for blessing us to where we can give. Thank you for the partnerships where we just meet people like Curry and are able to take trips and go to places and meet people like Stan Sherwood. Thank you for the call that each person has followed, Lord, where Curry leaving the education field and becoming a man and missionary, or Dave and Ruth leaving their various jobs to pursue what you have for them. And Lord, I pray that would be us, that we would be ready to say yes to whatever you have for us, Lord. especially in regards to missions and our involvement in that. I pray these things in your name. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, we've got to obviously turn this into a place to have church on Sunday, right? So if you're able to, please stick around and chat and stuff, but we are going to take all the little artifacts, the necklaces, all that kind of stuff, and put them on the stage so we can put those away well, because those actually belong to people. We're going to throw away all the pieces of paper. I encourage you to keep your picture so that you can hold on to that and pray for Keri. And then we're going to throw away the tablecloths. And if you're so inclined and you want to stack tables or whatever, you can just load them up against one of the back walls over there, and we'll be good to go. All right? Thank you so much. If you could stack your chairs also just when you're ready to leave them, that's fine too.